Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the case of Sabrina Caldwell? This case, which involves an adopted girl from Russia, was covered a couple of times on the show 48 Hours. Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I will put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. First, I'll look at the background in this case, then I'll offer my analysis. Crystal and Jesse Money were a married couple that lived near Atlanta, Georgia. The couple wanted to start a family and was looking into adoption. They found a website for a company that facilitates adoptions from Russia. In July of 1997, they traveled to Russia and adopted a 9-year-old girl who they called Cara Lee and a 3-year-old boy named Joshua. We later find out that Cara Lee now goes by the name Sabrina Caldwell, so I will refer to her as Sabrina. The records that Crystal and Jesse received describe Sabrina as open, tender, obedient, and friendly, so they were understandably excited about her temperament as they adopted her. Not long after getting back to Georgia, everything seemed okay. They appeared to be a happy family. But then, according to Crystal and Jesse, Sabrina started displaying rage and destructiveness. They accused her of stealing. Jesse continued his job as a computer engineer, but Crystal quit her job in order to spend more time with Sabrina and Joshua. Crystal found Sabrina to be very withdrawn and was hoping that love would fix that problem. On December 26, 1998, an incident occurred which would change the trajectory of their relationship. According to Crystal, after hearing Joshua screaming, she investigated only to find Sabrina holding Joshua over a deck railing. The deck was on the back of their house. It was 30 feet in the air. Sabrina explained her behavior by saying that Joshua was getting on her nerves and she just wanted to kill him. Joshua would later say that he was afraid of Sabrina. Crystal and Jesse arranged for Sabrina to receive mental health care at a facility. Sabrina told the clinicians that she was hearing voices and seeing things. The voices were telling her to kill. If she had another opportunity to kill Joshua, she would take it. She did not provide the clinicians assurances that she would not murder Joshua at some point. Various mental health clinicians had a number of opinions about what could be going on with Sabrina. They suggested that Sabrina was at risk to commit homicide and had tremendous rage. They thought she had clinical depression. This could actually refer to a number of disorders, including major depressive disorder and persistent depressive disorder. They didn't specify what the actual diagnosis was. The term clinical depression is really not that useful by itself. The clinicians also believed that she had attachment disorder, which is also not specific. That is not a disorder in the DSM. They were probably referring to one of two disorders that are in the DSM, reactive attachment disorder or disinhibited social engagement disorder. One clinician claimed that she may be developing bipolar disorder or schizophrenia. Another clinician had a different opinion, stating that Crystal and Jesse were too often cool and distant. The clinician described Sabrina's behavior as impeccable. Crystal and Jesse claimed that there was another dangerous incident, this time involving Sabrina trying to strangle the family dog. They installed cameras in the house to monitor Sabrina before sending Joshua to stay with his grandparents 600 miles away. They tried to figure out what to do with Sabrina. Crystal became convinced that Sabrina was a sociopath. The term oligophrenic appeared on Sabrina's records from Russia. This essentially means a developmental delay is present, but there was no mention of other disorders related to depression or attachment problems. It sounds like some of the records were not released until the adoption was official. At this point, Crystal and Jesse were able to find out a little bit more information about Sabrina's background. The record stated that Sabrina's mother was amoral, antisocial, and neglected Sabrina. Sabrina was housed in a special dorm in Russia for people with mental health disabilities. Crystal and Jesse were frustrated. They would not have adopted Sabrina if they knew she had a mental health history. They said they were worried about the safety of Joshua. Crystal felt as though Sabrina just wasn't bonding to her. There was no affection. Perhaps this actually played more of a role in their decision, but there's no way to know for certain. Crystal and Jesse transported Sabrina back to Russia during the winter of 1999. They put her in a mental health facility there, ostensibly for an assessment. It seems fairly clear that they were never going back to Russia to get her. Later, Sabrina said that she didn't think they would come back. This is, in fact, what happened. Crystal and Jesse never returned to pick up Sabrina. That's where the story ended from the first 48 Hours episode on this case. The correspondent on that episode, Troy Roberts, followed up years later, and another episode was produced. It aired in December of 2021. He had located Sabrina and was able to provide an update. He interviewed Sabrina, who was now 33 years old and lived in North Carolina. Back in 1999, Sabrina had spent 2 months in that mental health facility in Russia, but then the woman who ran the adoption agency brought her to Virginia. In 2002, she was adopted by a new family in North Carolina. Sabrina graduated from high school. She volunteered on a medical ship in Africa starting in 2008. In 2010, she returned to North Carolina and started working at a hospital. She met a school teacher named Phil Caldwell at a church. They married in 2014 and have 4 children. Here's what Sabrina said about her interactions with Crystal and Jesse Money. Sabrina indicated that she felt as though the couple liked Joshua better. She talked about how the incident on the deck was a misunderstanding. Crystal had asked Sabrina to get Joshua. Just as Sabrina picked him up, Crystal came out and saw them and somehow believed that Sabrina was intending on throwing Joshua off of the deck. Crystal repeatedly accused her of trying to kill Joshua until Sabrina agreed with her. Later, when Crystal would take Sabrina to mental health clinicians, she would say to Sabrina just before they would enter, "Just remember that you wanted to kill Joshua," like trying to remind her that that was the story they were going with. Sabrina made up the story about the hallucinations because she wanted to get away from the family. She did not know where the story about strangling a dog came from. Sabrina indicated that she does not have any mental health diagnosis and she takes no medications. Now moving to my analysis. This is one of those cases that elicits strong emotions. Some people side with Crystal and Jesse, saying that they were deceived by officials in Russia. They didn't know what they were getting into. Other people side with Sabrina, feeling as though she was a victim of an unhealthy relationship dynamic and was coldly rejected. No matter what her mental health conditions may or may not have been, she should not have been returned to Russia. That was cruel and unwarranted. Still others assign blame to the mental health clinicians. According to Sabrina, she has no mental health problems now, and yet in 1999, a few mental health clinicians said that she had mental disorders and may have been developing more serious mental disorders. Of course, there was one clinician who said that she was fine. It would appear as though that clinician was correct. With these factors in mind, I will talk about certain items in this case that stood out to me. Item number 1 is the mental health factors. I think it's reasonable to believe that Sabrina has no current mental disorders, which is what she indicated. This means that she never did, or she recovered from them. When stepping back and looking at this case, it seems clear that an incorrect mental health assessment was made, or the consequences of the diagnoses were not accurately predicted. So the clinicians diagnosed her with disorders she did not have, or they didn't understand the development and course of the disorders they diagnosed. They didn't seem to have much belief that she could recover, and they thought she was dangerous. Mental health assessment is not the most valid and reliable aspect of counseling. Even if Sabrina did have depression and attachment issues, or even bipolar disorder or schizophrenia, that didn't mean that she was hopeless. Crystal believed that Sabrina was sociopathic, which has nothing to do with those disorders that were mentioned by the clinicians. Sociopathy, which is also known as factor II psychopathy, is a set of personality traits. It is not the same thing as depression or hallucinations. Sociopathy could explain stealing, a lack of empathy, and risky behavior. But when talking about a 9-year-old girl who had been neglected in Russia and just moved to the United States with a new family, there are many other explanations for those behaviors outside of sociopathy, That would be pretty far down the list to consider. This may have been more about an adjustment to a new environment as opposed to being tied in with potential homicidal risk. Item number 2 is how people reacted to Sabrina's situation very differently. Some people wanted to help her, and other people wanted nothing to do with her. Crystal and Jesse returned her to Russia, a profound and devastating rejection. The 48 Hours correspondent, Troy Roberts, said he wanted to do something to help her. He was so inspired by his interaction with her that he adopted a boy from Africa years later. The woman who ran the adoption agency brought Sabrina back. Clearly, she wasn't worried about being harmed by Sabrina. Another family ultimately adopted Sabrina, even though Crystal and Jesse had indicated that they looked around before returning Sabrina and no family wanted her. I think what happened here was that people responded to different parts of the narrative. Several people appeared to be motivated out of compassion for Sabrina. Crystal and Jesse appeared to be motivated by fear for the safety of their son Joshua. This brings me to item number 3, the safety of Joshua. This is one of the parts of this story that doesn't really make sense. The couple that adopted Sabrina and Joshua appeared to have adequate financial resources, and Crystal stayed home with the children. Was Sabrina so dangerous that they really couldn't keep Joshua safe from her? They had installed cameras, they provided her mental health care, they probably put other safety measures in place. None of these were satisfactory. The only solution was separating Sabrina and Joshua by hundreds or thousands of miles. Seems like a bit of overkill. I find this difficult to believe. As Joshua grew older and became more physically capable, the level of threat that Sabrina represented would have decreased. This was a 9-year-old girl who was treated more like some type of cross between Jeffrey Dahmer, MacGyver, a ninja, and Chucky from Child's Play. Do they believe that she was trained by the KGB when she was in Russia? How much of a threat could she really be? What's more, there was no reason to believe, based on the diagnosed mental disorders, that Sabrina would fixate on one target forever. Even if she did want to harm Joshua, there's no reason to believe that that would have been what she always wanted to do. If she did represent a significant threat to Joshua, which I doubt, then really she would have been a threat to everyone, including people in Russia, after she returned there. Returning her was not a solution that would keep people safe. It was, in theory, a solution that may protect Joshua. But again, I don't think it really did. I don't think that there was ever a significant threat. There's the sense that this was really more about sibling rivalry, resentment, and acclimating to a new environment. Maybe some of the symptoms caused by those circumstances were misinterpreted as indicating some type of long-standing and dangerous condition. Item number 4 is the resilience of children. Even though Sabrina was evaluated for several months, it seems as though there was a rush to judgment in this case. A lot of weight was put on the devastating effect of mental disorders, and not much consideration was given to resilience, almost like people viewed Sabrina as irreparably damaged. What's as disturbing is that upon believing she was damaged, Crystal and Jesse believed the most desirable action was abandonment, almost like this was a case of conditional love. If a person is good enough, if they have good mental health, they can be loved. But if their behavior is undesirable, if they have a mental health diagnosis, they must be rejected. They must be isolated from the family. This is a shallow, simplistic, and uninspired way to view the human condition, and it is not what the mental health field is for. I think it's possible that the mental health assessments in this case, in addition to being potentially inaccurate, were misused and misunderstood. A mental health diagnosis is not designed to identify people that others should avoid. It is only to direct treatment. The presence of mental disorders does not predict violence. Sometimes it's better to give situations like this a few years, allow clinicians to try various treatments before making massive, life-changing decisions. Here's my theory about what happened in this case. This is just my opinion. I believe that a few mental health clinicians developed an inaccurate assessment and people misinterpreted the results. Sabrina may have been acting out due to stress that she was under and perhaps from neglect she experienced early in life. She played along with Crystal's theory about being homicidal because Sabrina wanted attention. She felt like Joshua was getting attention, and there was no better way to jump back in the spotlight than to pretend to be an aspiring killer. That would certainly get people's attention. Sabrina's self-report is what convinced the clinicians to believe she was dangerous. So they were really just going by what she said. It did not occur to the clinicians that children can lie on occasion and be strongly influenced by their environment. There were complex family dynamics at work. Those really need to be explored before labeling somebody as homicidal. Furthermore, it did not occur to them that Sabrina's behavior could change over time. Instead, they jumped to the worst-case scenario, both diagnostically and as far as potential outcomes. Somehow, the only clinician who developed an accurate assessment stating that Sabrina was fine was disregarded. Why was this clinician ignored? Perhaps by this time, fear had taken over, and the decision was already made. This is a cautionary tale about the proper use of mental health assessment, the necessity of skepticism, the power of resilience, and the impact of compassion, which, fortunately for Sabrina, found its way into her life eventually. Those are my thoughts on the case of Sabrina Caldwell. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis on this topic to be informative. Thanks for watching.